5 o'clock p.m. here on Monday, December 2nd, 2024. It's a nice and warm 65 degrees. I'm actually sweating a little bit as I move the cows to the second section here. Cows and the sheep. Looks like these ducks are looking for some free food. Anyway, let's take a walk. I had a guy come by to my house to look at some trees that we need taken down, and he asked me about my farm. He lives in the area. He's just down the street from where I'm at right now. I drive by his house every time I come to the field and come home. But he asked me, he says, is that just what you're doing, is the farming? Because everybody has a side job out here. You can't just farm and make money, you know? And I kind of explained my situation a little bit, that I'm starting out, I'm doing rotational grazing. I have 20 head of cow right now. I'm looking at getting a lot more sheep, you know, because sheep make money. But I didn't really get a chance to explain to him what rotational grazing was all about. And, you know, I get viewers. There's an audience of a handful of you guys that watch all my videos. I imagine there's quite a few people that just see the first few minutes and they turn it off. That's fine. By way of reintroduction, I guess, for you guys, this is not, I'm just not talking because I like to talk. I'm actually looking at the grass right now and thinking and processing the ideas that I'm hearing and what I'm thinking about. I actually go back and review these videos later. So I'm not just, talking to the wind here. I'm actually talking to my future self, and then I go back and listen to what I said and what I was thinking. So right now, I'm really pleased with the amount of grass in this row. About halfway through here in this row, and it starts to get a little bit thinner, but still really good grass. You know, if my whole pasture looked like this, I would just be golden. And honestly, at the top of my thought is that I lost my hammer. That's all I'm thinking about right now as I set up this area. And I remember now that I put the hammer on top of a bucket. And I said, I got to remember to put that hammer in the bed of the side-by-side. Otherwise, it's going to fall off and I'll never find it. Well, here we are. Oh, there's some wild birds there. So there might be a hammer here. I'll probably never find the hammer. Honestly, I'll never find it. The field swallows everything. There they go. Nice little birds. I'm sorry to scare you off, but I was looking for this dish too. So, my neighbors, they see what I'm doing. He actually mentioned to me, he said he was thinking about buying this property. And I said, you know, all of my neighbors said the same thing. They all wanted to get this property. And they kind of regret not taking it at the price that was offered. I feel really lucky to have this property. And I think that's one of the things that, if you're going to do this business right, you should be extremely grateful for the fact that you get to own a little piece of God's green earth. And you get to be the guy that decides the fate of the soil and the plants and the animals. And you have a real opportunity here to make a difference, you know. And we often have opportunities every day with our day-to-day interactions to make a difference in people's lives. But, you know, I can make a difference here in this pasture for this cow and that duck, you know, and it's kind of a different sort of responsibility. There's a guy that I watch off and on. I don't really watch all his videos. And he talks about neglect. And it's not just laziness, but, you know, it's something that I'm thinking about all the time too, is am I neglecting my animals? You know, I'm not worried about whether I'm going to end up in trouble with the law. I'm more worried about, you know, if I stand before God and he asks me, like, why did you do that to that cow? Or why didn't you do that for that cow? And if I don't have a good answer, if I just say, oh, you know, my back was a little sore, or I wanted to sleep in a little bit, you know, that's not going to be a very good answer, is it? You know, so I don't want to have to live my life that way, full of regret and apologies, you know. But the key thing that I was thinking is, like, why am I going to come out here to this part of the country and do something I've never done before? Something that isn't in my blood, at least not recently. My dad didn't do this. He was an engineer, and his dad was an accountant, right? So I'm at least 2 generations removed from agriculture as a business. Why do I think that, and half a continent away, right? Texas is not where my ancestors grew up. At least not recently. My mom's side, there were some ancestors from Texas, from I think Itasca. Anyway, I better have a darn good reason for doing this. And I think some people look at me like, oh, you're just out here just wasting your money and your time, keeping yourself busy, you know. You just wanted to go to the zoo every day, right? But that's not what it is. I felt very strongly that this could be the future of not just agriculture, but it could be the future of how we live our lives on Earth. One of the things that I think about is with the advent of technology and how fast technology is progressing, there's a very real concern. It's called the post-scarcity society, right? When you live in a society where people no longer need to work, that everything's provided for, you just push a button, the factory makes everything you need, sews all your clothing, makes all your food, builds all your houses, right? And we're scarily close to that right now, if not already having arrived there. I'll give you an example. Is like the clothing industry is all branding. The cost of making clothes is a tiny fraction of the price of what we pay for the clothing, right? And so in all reality, I could possibly build a business where I just sell clothing that suits people's needs for pennies on the dollar, right? So I can clothe the world. And of course the clothes would look stupid. They wouldn't be fashionable, and I wouldn't have a marketing campaign with expensive celebrities to market my clothing. But the clothing would be purely functional. It wouldn't look good. It wouldn't be fashionable, but it would work, right? And you wouldn't have to spend all that money you spend on clothing every year, which Americans spend shockingly low amounts of money on clothing versus other cultures. So my point is that we're rapidly approaching this point of post-scarcity, where everything that you need can be had for pennies, right? And you don't really need to work anymore. And there's enough wealthy people that the wealthy could easily just, provide for the poor, give them the things they need, and they don't even have to do any meaningful work. A lot of the jobs nowadays seem to be post-scarcity jobs, right? The whole service industry is a post-scarcity thing, right? People are doing jobs not because they're necessary and not because they're serving some actual need that people have, but because it's like a bonus on top, Like you could go and cut your own hair. You'd look like an idiot and a dork, but you could do it, right? You don't really need hairdressers, and yet how much money do we spend on cutting hair? What we're really doing is we're supporting these people that dedicated their lives to learning how to cut hair, which doesn't put food on anybody's table. It doesn't create machines that create food, or it doesn't, create buildings, but it's this whole industry that's just geared around something that, a stoic would think is completely unnecessary. And you know what I mean? So that's kind of a lot of what people are doing is they're working in these industries that don't matter. And I found that I was working in AI, artificial intelligence, not artificial insemination. And this sense of dread kind of washed over me as I realized that what we were playing with and the direction that programming was going, and that the possibility that I could ever write a line of code or 2 lines of code that would actually make somebody's life better so that they can make more food and build better homes and make more clothing and stuff like that was basically zero. Like we'd reached a point where, Apple was no longer providing computing to solve actual economic problems on the farm or in the factories, but Apple was just organizing people's photos and letting them know that their friend is at the door because it's their birthday. You know what I mean? And to me, that just seems terribly, I try to be a realist. I try to be grounded in reality, and those things don't matter to me. They literally don't. Like Christmas time comes around, what are you getting for Christmas? I don't care. I honestly don't want a Christmas present. I tell my family this every year. They give me a present. I'm like, oh, thank you for thinking about me. And it's kind of nice to have a present, along with everybody else. But, that's not really what inspires me anymore. It inspired me when I was younger and I wanted Transformers. I still have my Optimus Prime, if you're wondering. But anyway, what this is and why this is so important is not only are we redefining how we grow our food, and we're finding a better way that's even cheaper and better for everybody involved. And I can't think of any participant. The only people that don't benefit from this kind of agriculture are the people in the chemical industry and the transportation industry, right? A lot of that money that we were spending in our food to get chemicals onto our farms and that built the tractors and that moved all the machinery and stuff around, those jobs might disappear. They might not be necessary anymore, right? Now, obviously, we'll have to move the food products around, so not every trucking job is going to disappear. But there's a good chance that the fertilizer will no longer be a big industry. So you guys that are making fertilizer, that are working in those big fertilized chemical plants or whatever like that, there's a real possibility that one day you're going to wake up and realize nobody wants your product anymore, right? And if that happens, maybe you'll find another job, I don't know, making some other chemical, that people need. But those factories, the chemical plants are going to shut down. They're going to shut down if this thing catches on, like I hope it does, right? But that's the only people I can see that this hurts, is the people who are doing things that are unnecessary and aren't actually helping, right? Okay, so that's a long way of saying that I think this will revolutionize agriculture. Now, the other reason why I got so excited about rotational grazing and this style of agriculture is because of the philosophical reasons that now we have a job where I cannot, by myself or with a small team, manage hundreds of thousands of cattle, right? The way that I become efficient is I buy a certain number of cows, I run a certain amount of land, and then any more than that is more than I can handle, and I have to let somebody else manage that other piece of land, right? So even if I own that extra land or own the extra cattle, I need to hire someone to do that work, to manage that land and those cattle, right? So we're kind of, this is a really unique feature that I think we can see a return to agriculture of large numbers of people. And tell me if this doesn't excite you to know that these rural communities are going to explode with young men who decide that they don't want to work in a factory or an office or on a computer, but they decide that they want to go out and get 60 or 100 or 200 or whatever acres of their own and run cattle and sheep on it, paying close attention every day to how their behavior is changing the environment, how the grass is growing and drought tolerance and all that kind of stuff, right? And that's exciting to me. That wasn't, when I was a kid, the idea of working in farming was not even a possibility. In the 80s, unless you're a mechanic or a chemical salesman, you're not going to work on a farm. There were shockingly low numbers of people working on farms, and the only way they got their job was because their dads and grandpas were doing it, right? And that's just true across the industry. You go through the industry and you see people that are doing conventional farming. It's all generational. They're like the one kid of 8 that stayed behind and took the farm. The other 7 kids went off and got city jobs, right? But we have a chance here to bring people back to the land, right? We have a chance to spread people out. This was another thing that really bothered me, and Apple itself, the company, saw a problem with this, and they started opening campuses across the country. The cities are a problem. They're a real problem. Either we live so densely packed together that the economy of scales kick in, but in order to do that, you have to give up some very significant rights and freedoms, right? The idea of living in a city with a car is just not going to be the future. It can't work, There's no way to make that work, okay? So if you want to live in the city, you can't have a car, you can't travel the country freely, right? You have to rely on others to get in and out of the city and to move around. Property ownership is basically an impossibility in such an environment. There's going to be a few people that own all the property in the city, and you're going to rent from them, right? So they're going to collect rent checks by virtue of the fact that their grandpa got there first, okay? And that's just what city life is, okay? City life is just bad, okay? We don't like it. We want people to spread out, okay? We want people to live in the countryside, right? They live in a cleaner environment, they consume fewer resources, and they have greater freedom, okay? They don't have to live by so many rules, right? And one of the things I noticed with the World War II generation is a lot of them came back from the war and they were shell-shocked, or what we'd call PTSD nowadays, right? And somehow they knew that if they went back to their grandpa's farm and lived in that rural community, they could handle those symptoms better than if they lived in the city, right? And so a lot of that generation chose to move away from the city to the suburbs and even to rural areas for the simple fact that they couldn't live in cities, right? And so the rural areas are actually able to solve some of these problems that people have. And I think if, like, certain people, like, maybe you can live in a city for a while, but you can't live your whole life there, you know? It's just not good, you know what I mean? So that's another thing too that was kind of exciting, was getting people out of the cities back to the countryside and building up the communities, you know? There's a lot of land the United States have. That, you know, it's really sad watching these communities disappear. They used to be farming communities. They're disappearing because, you know, now there's only one farmer running the entire town. You know, there used to be 100 guys with small farms. Now there's one guy with one big, huge farm, right? And with this style of rotational grazing, it's like I need people if I want to scale. I don't need tractors, right? I need, if I'm going to buy a second farm, if I'm going to go up to, like, you know, the next biggest farm, like 160 or 320 acres or something like that, I'm going to need people, not tractors. You know, that's the thing, is this kind of farming requires people. It requires intelligence. It requires, you know, humans doing what humans do best, which is be out in nature, observing animals and thinking about, you know, stuff that's important for that. You know, it's going to get us out of our computer chairs and out of the offices, out of the factories, and into a more healthy and sane environment that I think is just going to be good for people all around. So that's another reason why this is important, and why I think that I'm not the first, but I'm definitely part of that early adopter crew, and there's going to be a lot of people coming after me. And so, kind of like as a pioneer, I'm trying to leave signposts to tell people, like, hey, this is what happened with me. This is what you need to be prepared for, you know. And kind of one of my dreams is to discover the secret formula so that a kid straight out of high school, or even a dropout from high school, with no assets and no skills, can go from 0 to 100 in a matter of years and end up running his own herd, you know, owning his own cattle, owning his own sheep, his goats, whatever he wants to do. If we could build a society that can take the people who don't graduate high school and give them an actual future of independence and self-reliance, I think that would just be tremendously wonderful, you know. And I think also we can stop sending everybody to college. Like, the vast majority of kids that are going to college shouldn't even be there. You know, I think the vast majority of kids we send to high school shouldn't be there. I don't know that high school actually serves a purpose in our modern society anymore. Most of the stuff that high school does can be done at the middle school level. And once they graduate from middle school or junior high school or whatever, go get a job. You know, if you're 16 and you want to be independent from your parents, start making money. You know, there's got to be something you can do. And this is one of those things you can do that doesn't require much education, you know. So anyway, that's kind of my thoughts, and that's why I'm excited about this. And yeah, I am kind of like a, city guy that, you know, got lucky and decided to waste his money doing this. But really, I don't see it that way. That's not what I'm about, and that's not what I hope to be about. So I really do hope that we can change the way that we make our food, and we can change the way that we make our money. So anyway, guys, those are my thoughts. Have a great day. Take care and bye-bye.